I am here today speaking with Jim Sonefeld, who is a drummer and songwriter, best known as the drummer with 90s rock band Hootie and the Blowfish. We are here today because I am speaking with past speakers from the Courage Center's annual fundraiser day in May. The Courage Center now has four locations: Lexington, Columbia, Orangeburg, and Aiken, and serves anyone affected by substance use disorder. Speaking of speakers, Jim, you were not asked to speak because you had a family member. You were the one with the substance use disorder, correct?
If I'm honest, which is what the program of recovery has taught me to be, yes, the
Yes.
main problem was me.
Yes. What, tell us a little bit about, well, I want to get into the family part and stuff, and talk about how important families are to a person's recovery, getting them there, supporting them once they're there. But just give us a little synopsis of what got you into recovery.
Well, when I was really struggling from about the year 2000 to the end of 2004, um, I thought I was keeping it under covers. I thought I wasn't hurting other people. I had rationalization and justification and denial, and I didn't give the people around me, who many were friends and family, and uh, people that I worked with who were like family because I spent most of my time with them. I didn't give any of their opinions much credence because I felt like they didn't see the real me, or they didn't know the depth of my woes and the reason that I drank and did drugs like I did. And it was only in hindsight that I could see that that wasn't a very clear picture. And often, especially with the family, it's complicated, but mostly the people that are outside of you have a very clear view of at least your actions and the results
Yeah.
from them. And
Uh-huh.
we often don't want to give the family around us sort of that, sort of credence or a belief that they might have an accurate appraisal of us. Sure, they don't know all of the problems, the inside problems, and um, I'm interested to look back and say, they actually, all the interventions I got, all the suggestions, all the people that were pulling me aside to tell me they were worried about me, that they loved me, but they were, they thought that my lifestyle was careening downward. They actually had a pretty good view of the real me, and it was important that eventually I did listen. It took some odd sort of interventions to make it through this very thick skull. The friends I could push off and sort of keep at arm's length and just tell them, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm fine." And then another closer friend who I'd known a long time, who was an adult, actually shared that um, they didn't want me to tell them the reasons I was doing the things I was doing. They wanted me to answer them for myself, which I thought was very valuable. I needed to answer questions for myself and be honest with me before anything could get better.
Mhm.
And then, really, the last one was the most intriguing. It was my 4-year-old daughter at the time who gave me an probably unrehearsed intervention. She had popped up on my chest. I was passed out on a couch on a Sunday morning after staying up late in a studio detached from our home, and she wanted to know what I was doing in that setting. Why was I passed out on a couch in the morning when her and her little brother and my first wife were in the house on a Sunday morning watching cartoons and eating breakfast? She just was curious, and she kept repeating that question, "What are you doing, Dad? What are you doing?"
Mhm.
And I couldn't
Mhm.
answer it. I didn't have the same excuse that I typically did, and I felt like there was something strong moving around me, or moving maybe just in my spirit, that said, maybe this is the day you can get honest and ask for help. And indeed, that's what was happening when she finally
Mhm.
left and stopped answering the question. I was faced with answering that question for myself, the one
Uh-huh.
who really needs the answer. What am I doing? And I realized at that point that I was, under the control of drugs and alcohol. They were ruling me, they were beating me down, and that was the first day I asked for help.
Amazing. And she didn't have any training with Al-Anon or the Courage Center, family coaching or anything. It's just out of the mouths of babes. Um,
Yeah, she
that
had the
come.
best maybe place to come from, innocence and a good intention and an honest question. And better yet, she didn't have the entanglement, or she wasn't an enabler. When she didn't get any answer, she just left, detaching with
Yeah,
detaching with love at its finest.
right. She left you to answer those questions on your own,
Yeah,
just like
I'll be
they,
inside. When you come up with an
yeah,
answer, Dad,
yeah,
go get some help.
yeah. There you go. That's awesome. And so, what is your family's role been in your recovery overall? Like since then, I mean, that was quite a while ago.
Well, the family, it's interesting. And as you mentioned, it's different for everybody. Certainly, I'd seen or heard of addiction in my family, but it was just through some vague stories or, hey, we think your uncle was an alcoholic or your grandpa or just random people who I really didn't still have in my life. And none of my immediate family really had any history with addiction or dealing with it that I knew of at the time. This was
Mhm,
2004, and
mhm,
so there was surprise. There was certainly support, which I'm blessed for to this day. That people let me go try and get help, and they supported me in that journey, which meant for them, they had lost one of their family members who used to party and used to be outward and join in all the shenanigans with drinking.
mhm,
And when you have to separate yourself from that, it's difficult. It's new for everyone. It's a change. And, change is very difficult, but it's also usually an opportunity for growth. And they let me grow slowly. And eventually, I became the guy in the family that no longer drinks because he has a disease. He can't control the scene when he puts it in him. He can't control how much he drinks, and so it became an opportunity for a good example that you can have a recovering person in your family. You can see what the disease looks like. You can help maybe destigmatize it, and that's always helpful. So living openly. As they allowed me to do as a recoverer within our family setting has been great, I think, for everyone. It's not like I'm there to teach anyone, but I am a living example as a recoverer that there are answers and that there's places to go and people to talk to about this devastating and life-threatening disease.
mhm. And because I know you and I know your story very well, Cameron or your daughter certainly was not the first person to bring it up in your family.
Yeah, well, one of the earliest interventions or person that was willing to tell me the truth about their worry for my drinking patterns was my mom. And I never liked it, of course. I was younger when she started telling me that she was worried. Maybe she could see the patterns. Again, from the outside looking in, she had a pretty clear view of the results, certainly. And so my mom was keen. She loved me enough to tell me the truth. And that only in hindsight was very meaningful to me. I usually thought it was nagging or complaining or pointing the finger at me or embarrassing me in front of people, but she was wise. She cared enough and loved me enough to say it in front of a group of our family. Jimmy, why are you drinking again? How many have you had? Are you going to
Mhm,
drive? All these
mhm,
questions that were fair and honest. And it was to point the spotlight at this person she was worried about. And so she would do these little mini interventions as my alcoholism got worse in the early 2000s. And, the family is interesting. She was a little older, obviously, and she never got to see me sober. And that also hurt when I was trying to recover and make
mhm,
amends and try and put in perspective what my family meant to me in recovery, not just in my drinking days. So she was a great example that, having someone honest in your life whose intention is to see you live a healthy life and a long life is a really important person. And I looked at it in the wrong way for the most part because my drinking was more important to me than anything
mhm.
else in my disease. So looking back, I was able to make an appropriate amend, and now that she's passed, sort of have a healing that allows me to see that I had flaws, I had wrongs, and that I can look back and know that she's looking down on me, knowing that I'm living a better life now, and then it's all okay.
Hmm. You said it was hard for your recovery, dealing with the fact that she didn't know that you got sober. There are so many people that I've met over the years in recovery that have that guilt that their mom or dad didn't know. How did you process that?
Well, the process is beautiful, and in the 12-step model, at least, part of the steps, the action steps are to look, they call it fact finding and fact facing. It means not only do I honestly look at, from a sober perspective, what these people's intentions might have been and what my denial might have caused and what my lying and deception might have caused, but I write it
Hmm.
out so I can see it organized. And that step was so important to me to not only look at the facts and have knowledge, but also to face them, stand up and take responsibility for them and be willing to move towards a better way of thinking. And that's what recovery means to me. It's saying, yeah, I accept that I am highly imperfect. I've made some bad choices in my life, and they give me a chance to look at them clearly and resolve them. And that's
Hmm.
what was the most important thing for my emotions and my past action was a chance to resolve, make a little sense of something, make it the right size, not make it so big in my life that it was a burden
Hmm.
I'd have to carry, but maybe shrink that down into something more pliable and reasonable so I could just call myself a human. What do we do as humans? We make mistakes, we have regrets, certainly we get resentments, but we have to face them and resolve them. So the pattern I got to learn to use in recovery was just that. I have some problems. I have some relationships that aren't working. I face them. I discover what the details are. I often write them out so they can be real. I don't try and solve
Hmm.
things up here where I don't know, my emotions can be too high or my brain can be too small. I write them
Right.
out slowly and intentionally to say, oh, here's what this looks like now that I see it on paper. And that has had great value for me going forward. And I get to see, some people have great intentions. Maybe they just
Hmm.
said it wrong. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe there's people around me that have their own illness that they're dealing with as well, and I have to sort of weigh that into the whole quotient. So it's a fascinating way to find peace ultimately, and I think that's what the person who's an alcoholic and the family around the sick person want is to have some level of peace because family does love one another.
Yeah.
Family that hurts one another still loves one another, but maybe they just don't have the ways to actually deal with it. So the recovery process and is just amazing for that. It resolves a lot of issues in a family.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many things you just said that are great and useful tools. And I'm going to key in on one that I love is that whole pen to paper and just how powerful that is. We think something here, we tell our hands to write it and process it, and then we see it on the paper afterwards, and that helps. And it's so important that we do whatever it takes to get over that guilt feeling of, oh, this person never knew, that type of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for sharing that one. And your family now, so your kids, they are well aware of your experience, your experience, strength, and hope, correct?
Yes, they've I ended up divorced from my first wife and then ended up remarrying and so I have three stepkids and my two from my first marriage and we sort of gathered after I'd been sober a few years and we had a sort of family setting that was different because it was a blended family, but my wife now, who doesn't drink or use drugs either. So we have two sober parents in a house where we're trying to help raise kids that are in elementary, middle school, high school
Hmm.
through that whole
Uh-huh.
period. And now the youngest ones are, 22 years old. But for us, it was a great opportunity to really get honest with the kids as they faced what most young kids do. By the time they get to their teens, they've seen or smelled some drugs, they've been exposed to alcohol, and we get to have real down to earth, honest conversations about them. Yeah, part of it maybe is used to scare them and show them that drugs and
Mhm.
alcohol are dangerous and life-threatening. Other times
Mhm.
it's just a lesson to say, think about this. But since we have nothing to hide in that regard, we have been able to be deeply honest and tell them some of the things that we faced. I mean, all we
Mhm.
can say is our experience. Kids, it seems, um, listen less to your words as we teach them and tell them, oh, blah, 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 blah. But they look
Uh-huh.
at your actions, I think, more for
Mhm.
us. And so when they see us um, just living a better life, up early in the morning, not staying up late, being embarrassing and drunk like maybe we could have been years earlier.
Mhm.
They get to see the results of what can recovery can offer someone. And so it's not like we're perfect by any means, but we get to say, we tried drugs, we tried alcohol, and because we are not normal, here's how they affected us. You're going to be
Mhm.
exposed to these things, kids. And it wasn't so much about laying this hard rule of you can never do it, and if you ever touch it or use alcohol before you're 21,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
grounded or whatever, or you're going to military school. That wasn't the point. It was to say, here's our
Mhm.
experience, and it's very valuable. Here's what
Mhm.
drugs and alcohol can do to you. And when you come time to where you're curious about them, remember remember what we're telling you because
Uh-huh.
we can't stop you can't stop people from doing what they're choosing to do. So for us,
Exactly.
and we're different than a lot of parents in that regard, we chose to just educate them as much as we could instead of laying
Mhm.
down some real, I don't know, hard rules and high walls that kids are just going to figure out a way to get over,
Yeah.
and so all five of them are different. That's the other thing we had to realize is that some of them weren't drawn to using alcohol or drugs. Others
Mhm.
were. Others wanted to do like we did, which was lie about it,
Yeah.
cover it up, hide it. And we don't feel that that's healthy either. So we have tried to initiate open conversations. Hey, if you have an experience with drinking and you're not 21, son or daughter, let's talk
Uh,
about it.
right.
Let's see what it did to you. How do you feel? And
Mhm.
there wasn't usually any big punishment involved. Our only hard rule was you don't get behind a steering wheel if you've had anything to drink. And I think we did pretty good with setting that boundary.
Mhm.
And they're all adults now, so they get to make their own choices. But they certainly know where to go since we've been open
Yes.
books
Right.
about alcohol and our experience and recovery. They know where to go if they've got an issue with it. So
I think it's so important for people to be honest with their kids and people around them to a degree, not necessarily going to work and tell everybody, but I think within that family unit and letting the kids know. I know people in recovery that have been very honest with their kids and that have not been very honest with their kids. And I've seen the kids' relationship in their adult years or later years be very different from each other. Their relationship with alcohol be very different than the ones that knew, the ones that didn't. I was talking to Edwin yesterday, and he said he was talking about how his son complained that he's kind of ruined drinking for him, and because he's got that voice in his head, but at the same time, they do know where to go. They do, they can spot it if they drink too much, that type of thing, and not feel like they have to hide and lie, because that's the worst part about it is the hiding and lying. And if my parents are listening, I never lied or anything about it except for just now. That was a lie. But yeah. Um, when you when you work with people, one of the things that I do this for a living now, as you know, and 9 times out of 10, the first people that call me is not are not the people with the substance use disorder. It's a family member or spouse or some friend, someone concerned about so and so. I'm sure you get that as well from people that know you're in recovery and know your story. What is it? What do you tell the family when they call, if it's a family member?
well, the first thing is usually about you know, the willingness to realize that they can't control another person. Obviously, unless it's a child living in their home, that might be different. But for the most part, is allowing that person to understand they need to sort of release and relinquish trying to control this person because the active addict is uncontrollable, especially if they're adult aged. they can make their own decisions. And part of one of the, I guess, prayers that has been useful to me going forward is one I often use with like family members who are asking, and the prayer suggests that we're praying to try and distinguish two things, so we don't get in trouble wasting our energy and trying to control people. And it's the serenity
Hmm.
prayer, and it's being
Hmm.
willing to say, hey, there's something out there that I can't control. So I'm not going to try and wrestle it down and waste my time. Or there's maybe something in my attitude or my ideas that I need to change, or
Hmm.
both. I think a lot
Hmm.
of times it is both, but it's trying to distinguish these things so we understand and we don't get, excuse me, in the wrong fight, in the wrong battle. If we can't
Hmm.
control something, then let's not waste time trying to control it. And if I admit that I can't change that situation or that person, that helps me know that I probably need to end up in this other category of there's something in my attitude or my ideas that I do need to change if I want
Hmm.
peace. And it's all about having some peace, having some serenity,
Hmm.
and not just staying in chaos and embattled. So a lot of times it's to say, hey, do you answer that question? Do you think you
Hmm.
can change the situation, or do
Hmm.
you think you can't? Because if you tell me first you can't, you probably are in this other category of
Uh-huh.
I need to have a different outlook on this thing, I guess, or I need to
Right.
be more patient or accept that it's just not my battle. And it's
Hmm.
hard when it's children. I have to be delicate. I've raised children, but I don't know others' relationships with theirs. And it's so, and also I'm not a counselor. I just have my experience listening and watching other recoverers, how they've dealt with their
Hmm.
families, and how I deal with guys that I try and help through the program as well. And it's
Yeah.
usually a real sticky mess. It's a
Hmm.
hard situation. It often involves miscommunication and deception and resentments and regrets and expectations. And it's hard to sort through that. But, if you can at least establish, hey, is it mine to control, or do I need to change an idea in my head? That's a good start anyway for
Hmm.
someone to look at so they can strategize what their next move might be.
That's one of the reasons I'm looking real forward to Dr. Johnson speaking and hearing that aspect, and did because I'm sure he thought it was his fault during some of it, what he could control and everything. And I think the focus for the family members so often is because, the focus is on the person suffering from the substance use disorder and all the ways that they can fix it or all the ways they can make it better. And it becomes about them, the person, the participant, and instead of taking care of themselves.
Yeah,
Often I'll say at the end of the conversation, after they're, telling me everything that they've gone through and they're worried about, and I'll say, what are you doing for yourself? And it's a dead silence on the other end. And and that's why the Courage Center was created in the first place. And of course, there's 12 steps around the family healing and different stuff as well. So it's great that those programs are out there, and so important that family members know as well, because that trying to control things, as you know, will drive us to depths that we don't want to go. That
yeah,
I think that's what can cause anxiety in us, is the feeling, the need to control. And so,
absolutely.
which is prevalent in anyone wanting someone to get better. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, good. Well, I hope you can join us on May 7th to see Dr. Jermaine speak, Dr. Jermaine Johnson speak. Um, it is going to be, just so you know, 11:30 at Segra Park. Will be lunch. So
I hope you've learned a lot from me today, John. I appreciate
I
you
have.
talking and listening,
L-
especially.
Listen, yeah. Thank you. Who knew I could actually listen. But yeah, thanks so much, and for everything in your experience, strength, and hope, and being here today, speaking at the Courage Center in the past, and being such a strong supporter of it still today.